Today, Ryne Sandberg, one of the all-time great Cubs and Hall of Famer, announced that he's battling prostate cancer. I want to talk about what Ryno means to the Cubs and what he means to me. Let's talk about Ryne Sandberg. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the Cubs Baseball Channel. Let's get this thing started. Go Cubs. What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Baseball Channel. I'm Mick Gillispie at Broadcaster Mick on the socials. Every day we try to keep you updated on what's going on with the Cubs, but yesterday's news a little bit more personal than where Cody Bellinger is going to end up in free agency, and that's when it was announced by Ryne Sandberg, that he has cancer. Now, let me tell you, Ryne Sandberg was, when I was a kid, my favorite Cub. Him and Andre Dawson and those Cubs teams in '84, and then obviously in '87 when the Hawk was there, and watching Ryno every day when I got home from school on WGN and wanting to wear number 23 because Ryno wore number 23. And then what was amazing is that I got to broadcast the Cubs AA affiliate with Ryno, and I remember walking in to the manager's office the first time, and there he is. There's Ryno, and getting to know him and trying to figure out how to relate to someone that's one of the best players ever, and it's someone that I idolized as a kid. And what I did was I read his book. I read the entire book in 3 days so that I would just kind of have some perspective on what Ryno is and what he means to the Cubs. And I mean, I knew what he meant to me, what he means to baseball, and kind of what makes him tick. And what I found out is that, in that book, and then obviously getting to know him after that, is that he's a fantastic guy. I mean, you guys remember him. I mean, a Hall of Fame second baseman, 15 years with the Cubs, and a 10-time All-Star, and played with the Cubs from 82 to 97, and all the home runs and the stolen bases and the gold gloves at second base. And and eventually he'd leave the Smokies and go to the Phillies and get a chance to manage there and, fulfill that itch that he had to be a manager one day. But, in 2009, I spent pretty much every day with the 1984 MVP and one of the greatest Cubs of all time. And I found him to be fantastic. I mean, a guy who liked practical jokes, and he used to pull them on me, and I would, obviously I'd pull them right back on him, and he loved that. And I got to know Jody Davis and Bobby Dernier and, his former teammates, and I'd hear the stories that he would tell and they would tell. And I loved him, man, and I still do. And when I found this out today, I obviously just praying that he's able to overcome, this cancer and beat it. But what he meant to me is he just was like everything that you would think a Hall of Fame player would be, like hearing the stories about facing Nolan Ryan and the '84 season and, the Sandberg game and all of that stuff, but a lot more. He was so hungry to win, and he would chew his arm off. I used to say that, to win a game. And then when you kind of get past the barriers of, everybody's fighting for his attention, and, and I mean, I guess in a way you're doing the same thing. I mean, I interviewed him a lot, constantly about different stuff. We talked all the time about the team. And I remember he went to the Hall of Fame and came back, and, we sat in the dugout in a pouring rainstorm and just for 20 minutes talked about what the Hall of Fame meant and, why wasn't Pete Rose in there and the feeling for him, not as a guy getting inducted, but as one of the guys on the back side now, helping the players that were getting in there and how Andre Dawson needed to be in the Hall of Fame, at that time he wasn't in the Hall of Fame and Ryno was dead set on the Hawk being in the Hall of Fame. And I used to tell him, I'd say, "Hey, Ryno, I'd be like, "You know who my favorite Cub is, right?" And I'd kind of like hint that it was him, and then I'd be like, "Oh, it's the Hawk," and I'd walk out of the room. So I'm hosting a panel at the Cubs convention here, and him and Hawk get off stage, and I'm going on, and then I stop him, and I'm talking to Ryno, and I'm like, same joke, and he's like, "Hawk, get over here," and then, I meet the Hawk, and it's like, there I am. These guys I watched Harry and Steve on WGN talking about, and now I'm here like just, you know you know, chewing the fat with 2 of the guys that I admired so much as a kid, and they're just people, man, just like me, and you don't really think of that when you're, collecting baseball cards as a kid. But when today I heard that, that Ryno had cancer, immediately I text him and say, "Hey, man, love you," like, and he's like, "I'm gonna beat this," like, and of course he would think that, and I hope he does, and I know prostate cancer is curable, and I certainly hope that that's the outcome of this, but, there's still that point where you're concerned and you think about what someone has contributed to your life. Now, I have a whole Cubs room in my house, and I've got Ryno's fungo bat that he gave me, signed when the season was over. And I got, different stuff that, that you collect over the course of time, and there's a lot of Ryno in there. But it's because I loved him, like not just as that great second baseman, but as that person that exemplifies everything that's great about the game of baseball. Um, and not even the Hall of Fame stature, but the person, the guy you that was superstitious, and I found out that he that he only pick up pennies that the heads up. I put a lot of pennies around with the heads up, so he'd have to pick them up. And he would irritate me on stuff, like when the bus wasn't on time or the bus wasn't, I'm overseeing the bus. It was always a problem, a problem with the bus because Ryno knew that irritated me. I just think that for all of you guys that are out there and you're like, "Hey, man, what is someone like Ryno?" He's fantastic. He's a winner. He's a person who you can't get enough time around, the interviews, the jokes. I remember one time I'm interviewing him and he's like, "Mick," and I'm so used to him pulling tricks on me. He's like, "Mick, that ball, it's coming," and I'm like, and he's like, "No, I'm serious, it's coming." I put my arm up and it hits me like right here. He's like, "I told you it was coming." I'm like, "Well, you fool me all the time." And Jody Davis tells stories about Ryno, like, you know, lighting people's, shoes on fire and, lighting people's newspapers on fire in the bathroom and stuff. But he is really a great guy. He exemplifies everything that the Cubs are all about, winning and taking time to sign. He used to do this thing where he would sign every single autograph that he could get to in a game, to the point where he would just come out before the games, like after BP and before, like before first pitch, and he would sign so many. They called the aisle between the dugout and home plate Sandberg Alley because people would line up and get autographs. And the best story I can tell you guys, we were on a bus trip and it's, like 3 in the morning and Rhino's hair's like up here and we're tired and, we're still like 5 hours from home and we stop at this gas station And we go in and we're just like, finding like snacks and stuff, I mean, things you do at 3 in the morning at a gas station, right? In the middle of nowhere. And I walk in and there's this table. And it's like this mom and pop like country tablecloth, and on there they've got these quail eggs, right? And I'm like thinking to myself, like, who where in the world are you gonna have like a tablecloth of quail eggs? And I see him and I'm walking by and I see these quail eggs and I'm like, "Hey, Ryno, you want some quail eggs?" And before he like gets a chance to like look, I'm just like off, like just have him there pondering these quail eggs. And so a couple weeks later, he's doing his Sandberg Alley thing and he doesn't know it, but I set up someone to come through the line of autographs with a jar of quail eggs, and they I had the people in the front office like make the covering with Ryno, right, with a quail on his shoulder. And the guy's like, "Hey, I got these Ryne Sandberg quail eggs," right? So I'm on the field doing the pregame. I come back and he's like, "Mick, you're not gonna believe this. I got these. This guy made me these quail eggs," and he's showing all the guys and all the players that are around. And then I'm like, I had like a big giant picture of the pitching coach's face under the quail eggs, and I'm like, "Oh, that's great." And I turn it upside down, and there's Dennis Wellen. And he realizes like it was the most strategic hoax of his life. It was great. And he gets this big smile. It's like, "Oh, you got me." He couldn't stop laughing. But we're praying for Ryno. We just want him to beat this. And I love Ryno. And I don't know that this is one of those videos where we're talking about all the things going on, and we'll get back to that. But today was about Ryno. And I know that you guys kind of feel the same way. Maybe get in the comment section and tell me what you guys think about Ryno. But I know I love him, and my life was definitely fulfilled being around him. And I'll tell you this story too. My father died when I was young, and he didn't get to experience a lot of the stuff that I've gotten to do in my life, and I've had a great life. I just tell you that. Like, it's been fantastic. And one of the coolest things ever was you guys see the video in the open, right? And I'm there, and I'm interviewing Ryno, and then at the end of the interview, like the team had made the championship series, and Ryno takes this beer and he pours it on my head, right? And they're in the middle of the video, like at the middle of the video, like, and so I walk out, and there's a bunch of people out there, and I go, "I wish my dad was here to see that." Ryne Sandberg just poured a beer on my head, and he wasn't mad at me. And I just remember how cool that was. So, look, guys, prayers for Ryno. Tell me your Ryne Sandberg stories, what he means to you. I know he means a ton to me, and some of you guys probably don't remember him. I mean, he played back in the '80s and the early '90s and stuff. But for me, in my youth, I wanted to be Ryne Sandberg, man. I wanted to wear 23. I wanted to play second base, and I love him, and he's a great guy. I'm sure he says he's going to beat this. He's going to beat it. But there's just that part of your, in your life that you're, kind of the thing that makes you who you are. You're just like, man, this guy means so much to me. Not just that we work together, not just that we're friends, but growing up watching him on TV and everything else. So today was all about Ryno, and I love him, and I know you guys do. So, hey, tell me what you think about him. Thanks for hanging out, and go Ryno, go Cubs.